Welcome to Viewers and Coins of the Vault alike. I am Tatsumari, and normally this is the day where I would get onto the computer and do some kind of gaming stuff. Well, today I am not feeling kind of gamey. Past, I don't know, a couple weeks, it's just been, it kind of felt like a grind to do much of anything. And, games just didn't seem that fun. So I decided to do something a little different. Elden Ring, I'm kind of taking... I know the intro over here showed that I was going to be playing Elden Ring. That's because I probably forgot to do the right intro. But I'm taking a break from Elden Ring just because I really do like the game. Honestly, I really do like Elden Ring. But I want to make sure that I don't get burned out on it. Because with the DLC that's been announced coming out, I believe it's called Shadow of the Erdtree, I would like to be, actually excited to play it rather than just like, I gotta do this. So I'm taking a break from Elden Ring for a while. I'm also taking a break from Satisfactory for a while because Update 8 for Satisfactory just came out. And there are a few performance issues. So I'm kind of waiting for those to get fixed. Between just being the fact that it's a new update. I play in the experimental branch. I could go back to the early access one, but I really like playing in the experimentals because that's where all the goodies are. But, like it says, experimental is experimental. So I'm going to wait a little, give it a couple weeks to see how it smooths out. Also, the fact that Coffee Stain Studios has been announcing that they are going to be going on vacation so that the bug fixes won't come as quickly. So, again, I'm going to let them do their thing while they get reports in and do bug fixes and whatnot. It's an awesome studio. I'm going to try and play that game all the way up to 1.0. But we shall see how it goes. As for today we are going to be looking into some later bits of the story for Maplestory the novel. Now, for those of you who've been kind of following along, Maplestory the novel currently has on the channel, the videos are currently up to chapter 15 part 2, I believe. I'm working on part 3 right now. I'm down to like the last, 2 or 3 minutes worth of video that I have left to do. So if everything goes okay, and I have to go get some lunch and, be a human being, I should have that video out this evening sometime, for you guys to enjoy. And for the Maplestory nerds out there, this is where Dane's also famous declaration that the ultimate darkness can only be found in the ultimate light will happen. So, hype. There is also the teaser trailer that is on the channel somewhere, so you can go check that out if you so desire. However, like I said, today we are just going to be looking into future stories. Now, if you don't want this to be bad, I will say it right now. This is going to be major spoiler territory, because this is way past where the current written story is, which is currently, I think, chapter 18 of Guardians. So, this is way past that. At the very least, it's going to be the next book, or season 3. So, just kind of reading through it to not only refresh my memory, but to give you guys something to look forward to, I guess you could say. With that in mind, How far forward would you guys like to go? I mean, at least for the live crew here. How far forward in the story would you like to go? Currently, like I said, in the written story is up to season 2, Guardians. But I have available here. Let me do a thing over here. There we go. I currently have season 3. Let me move this over here. So I have season 3. Both I had to break it up into 2 parts because Google Docs apparently doesn't. The actual document is way too big apparently for it, so I had to break it up into 2 parts. I have season 4, which is not actually completed, but there's a lot of story there. And I also have the beginning of what would be probably the last book? I'm not sure. I haven't gone that far yet. So, where would you guys like to start? Season 3, Season 4, or Season 5? Or would you like to start somewhere else? What sounds interesting to you guys? Let's see. What I need to do... I need to do a thing. How did I do the thing? I forgot how to do the thing. Ah, I think. Ah, there we go. Start a pool. Where should we start? Oh, Red Wolf. Well, thank you very much. I hope you are interested in sticking around for a little while. See what we got going on here and what it exactly is I am into. Hopefully it'll be entertaining for you. Alright, so there's the poll right there. Where should we start in the story? This is the story of Maplestory, the novel, formerly called The Guardians. This is a story I have been working on since like 2010, 2011. I have been working on this major things. The very first story was called The Guardians. And I used to post it in the Maplestory forums for a while. And I had it up on DeviantArt, but it seems the popularity and interest in at least Maplestory okay. If you would like to start with season 1, there is both the if you'd like to on blah, blah, blah. Let me start that again. That was awesome content, wasn't it? You know, give me a big thumbs up for awesome content for that, you know. Season 1, if you would like to, on your own time. I can start there myself. Season 1 does have the videos, which is called Sacred Tears, does have videos up on my channel right now, and it's up to like chapter 15. And I'm working on rounding out chapter 15 right now. That's on the channel. The written story does have all of Season 1 completed, as well as about halfway through Season 2. So from here out, what I'm showing here is beyond Season 2, but we can start anywhere you like. Okay, so it looks like we got a vote for Season 3 and a vote for somewhere else. Okie dokie. Well, we got someone who isn't familiar with this story. And we have someone who possibly is and is suggesting Season 3. So... this is quite a dilemma. All right. So, I'm just kind of hanging out here for the now. I'm experimenting, let's put it that way, with live streams. So, would you... We have a vote for Season 3, okay. Would you be... Those of you who are in the live chat right now, would you guys be interested in a live watch party of Season 1 from the beginning, of all the videos that I have so far? Now, also keep in mind that the Season 1 videos that I have up are also pretty much, save for a couple bits here and there, word for word of the written story. So we can start with Season 1, if that is something... Season 1 on the videos, if that would be something you interest you guys. Alright, give me a second here. I'm going to do a thing. Okay. Alright, well, then we shall start with Season 3. And, Red, like I said, if you so desire, you can go to my channel and check out Sacred Tears. There's an entire playlist. It's done in such a way where it's kind of like an audio book / audio graphic novel. So you can sit down and watch if you like, or you can actually just listen to it while you're doing stuff. So it's pretty cool stuff. All right. So, Season 3 it is. Now, I guess I should kind of give a synopsis of Season 2. Season 2 was kind of the beginning of... is a continuation of Season 1, of course. Duh. But it follows the adventures of 5 teens who basically get isekai'd into the Maplestory world. Maplestory, it is a fanfiction. Blech. The Story Guardians is a fanfiction of the MMORPG Maplestory. And it is their adventures of basically going through what the real-world equivalent to the game would be. This being Season 3, the story is so long, this is kind of like that bit, just continuing on. Red, or anybody else in the chat, if you have questions about the story up to this point that's been previously written or anything, feel free to ask and stick it in the chat. I will answer it as best I can. So, here we go. With caution, she guided the submarine down into the depths of Aquarion, where fearful creatures lurked. Massive sharks cruised by, and the mysterious bonefish, aquatic cousins of the skelegon, would sometimes bump into the sides of the hull, making it squeal as their bones drug across the metal. Pressing a few buttons on a screen, she brought the sub down to rest on the ocean floor, next to a wall of glowing and glittering magic. At the airlock, she punched in a code as the tube extended from the side of the sub and through that magic, allowing her to walk into a cave. The dark cloak she wore covered her face in a deep shadow, hiding her face.
but the sleeves were just short enough to reveal her soft, slender hands. "Carta, are you here?" she asked, taking a few steps into the cave, listening as water dripped from the roof onto the rocks for any sign of the woman she called for. "Yes, I am here," came the sumptuous reply. Cautiously she stepped through the darkness until she came to a place where the cave opened up. A pot of blue-gray potion spilled over the sides of a cauldron, dripping down into the green fire that burned below. The woman smiled, remembering something from long ago, when she jumped as a plume of violet smoke swirled from the floor in front of her and then slowly died away, revealing a tall, opulent woman. Her soft violet hair tickled the ground, covering one of her dark eyes, softly cascading down her back, gracing her ashen skin. Atop her head was a large black shell. Atop her head was a large black shell held her hair in place. Her tight skirt hung low around her hips, reaching to the floor with slits running up either side, allowing the entirety of her toned legs to show with each captivating step she took. The smoke settled around her chest for a moment, dying away with a revealing half-bodice. "Ah, so you've come to visit at last. What is it you seek?" Carta asked, as in an unsettlingly enticing tone, as she walked towards the woman, setting her black finger-tipped hand on her shoulder. First walking past her, then behind her. "Have you come to ascertain what will happen to your love?" Carta inquired, placing her other hand on the woman's shoulder and leaning down to her ear. "We both know what his fate shall be," the woman replied, a slight pain hanging in her words. "Have you come to see what it is that will happen to you?" Carta whispered into her ear, standing to her full height, nearly a foot taller than the woman, putting her attractive hands atop her hips. "Don't mock me, Carta. I haven't the time, nor does it seem that you do if you are using your mana doll," the woman snapped, seeming agitated or desperate. Carta luxuriously walked from behind her and dipped her finger into the pot, licking the potion off her finger and smiling. Her black lips spread to reveal her white teeth within. "Then do us both a favor and don't make me drag your question out of you. You always were a bit of a tease," Carta smiled. The woman sighed and held out her hand with the ingredients that Carta would need. "I see. What is it that you want to know?" Carta asked, as she dropped each of the herbs into the smaller pot of salt water she had next to the pot of potion. "I want to know if you feel or see what will become of Ossyria." Carta dropped her head to the side, her eyes almost laughing as her hair draped over her shoulder. Now, you and Reen were the ones that taught me the future is only a possible future. You should know that," she said, with an almost condescending tone. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of these brackets here, because actually I used to put these in for the Maplestory forums, because it uses that code. Anyways. With a final flick of her wrist, she dropped the last of the herbs in and began watching the water swirl. She stirred the pot, then watched as images passed before her, the woman waiting in anticipation. "Tell me, have the people accepted what had happened?" Carta asked as she continued to stir, waiting more so for the images in the pot to stabilize. "There are no longer any people left from that time. I would have come to you sooner and told you, but circumstances prevented me from doing so," the woman replied, stepping closer to the light from the green flames under the cauldron to get a better view of what was to come. "I see. Well, the waters tell of two possibilities. neither of which has a very joyous air about them. The woman lowered her head slightly before motioning with her hand to continue. The first is that the Guardians will fail, all 6 of them having their lives ended just as they are going to deliver the final blow. Carta was flung back from something hitting her in the head, casting her to the wall before dropping to the ground. "Carta!" the woman cried, and was about to come to her aid when Carta held up her hand. "I'm all right. Whatever was going to happen, I couldn't see beyond the final blow." Carta stood once again and peered into the pot as a tear fell down her soft and alluring cheek. "The second is that the Guardians will succeed, but many lives will be lost in the battle, and the happiness that it would have brought will be tainted. One of them will die, but—" Carta seemed to choke on her own words as the images passed before her. "What is it?" the woman asked. "Ossyria will pay the price in that one's stead," Carta cried. The woman nodded and turned away, saddened by the news as she left. "Ice Dancer, please don't do it. Don't leave me here alone," Carta said, almost seeming desperate as she walked up to her and threw her arms tightly around the woman's shoulders. The woman stopped and placed her hand on Carta's as a strand of golden hair fell from under the hood into the dull light of the fire. "I have no doubt in my mind that the Guardians will succeed, but I can't let their victory be a milestone of grief. No, you can't let me be here. Can't leave me here all alone. Not again," Carta begged, clinging tighter to Ice Dancer, who smiled and squeezed her hands. "I'm sorry that you have been here all alone for so long, but you needn't worry about the people of Ossyria any longer." "You can't leave me here by myself. I would confide in Reen, but she has disappeared. Chorus is no longer redeemable. Don't leave me," Carta begged one final time. Ice Dancer struggled to hold back her tears as she spoke. "I'm sorry, Windharp, but I must. Thank you as always, my sister."
Well, what you think so far? Interesting? Okay. Well, I'm not exactly an ASMR person, but hopefully it was, if not calming, at least interesting. Yeah, some of the descriptors I think I'll have to take out a little bit, because I tend to be sometimes a little overly descriptive, so I'll have to kind of mess with it a little bit and see if I can make it a bit better. All right. So, I know you said you had to leave, Red, but you are welcome to stay as long as you can. Just, enjoy what you have, or enjoy what you can, and we'll go from there. I will have the stream up later if you want to watch it later, so there's that. All right. So, moving on. Chapter 1 of Season 3. Quietly, the mage walked through the halls of the main castle, stopping for a brief moment from time to time so he could see the faces of his students that had been recruited. They were gaining more followers with each passing day. Dragon melted into existence from the shadows and fell in step on the left of the mage, while Eleanor appeared on his right and gave her report. The Chief Memory Knight reports that there has been no unusual activity within Edelstein. The Wyverns report that Dragon Noir hasn't been seen or heard from since his defeat with Evan and saving Mir. And our contingency plan is progressing smoothly. The mage nodded silently as the 3 of them walked to the dungeon. Empty cells housed long-dead soldiers or unbending disciples. Skeletons were the only thing that remained due to the thick miasma that hung in the air. It could kill if one was exposed to it for too long.
Coming to one of the cells, the mage looked inside, narrowing his eyes as he looked at a man with charcoal-colored skin, sitting with legs crossed and hands folded, touching the tips of his thumbs together.
When one is forcefully brought, it is hardly a summons. You have no honor, Black Mage,
the man said, keeping his eyes closed while he meditated, mostly to not let the sight of fear that he felt be seen. The mage's eyes disappeared as he shut them and breathed a long, self-restraining breath, whispers weaving their presence into the air. The man unfolded his legs, shifting to his knees while keeping his hands folded.
If I knew why I was brought here, then there would be no reason in my being brought here, would there?
Man replied, still keeping his eyes shut for his own purposes. It has come to our attention that you have made a home for yourself within the gardens of Herbtown, Eleanor said. The man tilted his head up as if to meet the gaze of Eleanor, casually panning his eyes to the mage, and nodded.
I have. What is it that you have in mind?
The mage opened the door and silently walked in, holding out a small vial with an invisible substance within it.
What am I to do with this?
The man asked, taking the vial and looking over the liquid within, almost feeling thousands of tiny presences from within it. Whispers surrounded him as the mage held out his hand, bringing up an image of the herbs and tonics stored throughout Herbtown. The man smirked as he tucked the small vial in his sleeve and reached for his hat. The mage's whispers filled his ears once more.
Defeat the Guardians? Why would I do that?
He asked, until the mage produced the Black Wings badge, adorned with a tiny golden insignia that identified him as one of the elite within the mage's inner circle, a general of the Black Wings. The man smirked to the side as he slowly opened his eyes and reached for his bamboo sword, as well as his invisibility scroll.
And if I fail in defeating them?
The mage stopped, his eyes narrowing as he turned to look back at him over his shoulder, making the air become cold and stale. The man nodded his understanding, waiting until the mage was out of the dungeon before he made his way out and on to his mission. All right, I need some water here. And a word to the wise over here, don't forget to by a friend of mine, don't forget to hydrate before you dehydrate. Alrighty. Continuing on. Careful, Helen. Remember what happened last time? Jack mumbled. It's no use. I must take it out. Helen panted, brushing the hair out of her face made damp from her sweating forehead. We're almost done. Just keep going. Jack, this is the hardest one yet. I have to take it out. Helen hissed back. Hey, I'm being cheeky here. No, leave it in. You're almost there. I've made up my mind. It's coming out. Helen closed her eyes and reached out her hand, grabbing the small reactor and pulling it from the circuit board, listening as another Beyond the Clouds cannon shut down. Hey guys, what's up? Called Antonia, making Helen jump and accidentally touch the contacts of the reactor to the circuits, fusing it and making the machine spin up and out of control. Antonia, what did I say about sneaking up on us like that? Jack hollered. Sorry, I thought you guys were done. Jack shook his head and pulled Helen to her feet, running as fast as they could away from the machine until a plume of blue fire erupted into the sky, spreading a thick cloud of smoke into the air. Jack coughed hard, pulling his face out of the dirt and shaking his head to get the pebbles out of his hair. Oh, I guess I should note right now, even though from what I'm reading right now, it will change in the future because Season 2 right now, I am currently setting up something completely different for the character relations, or like who's dating who and whatnot. So
the majority of the story will stay the same. However, just keep in mind that the character relationships will change in the future. Next time, wait until you see us away from one of these things, Jack said between heaves. Olson and Ozzy appeared, running to them after they had dispatched another of the cannons. You guys all right? Ozzy asked, holding out his hands to Helen and Antonia to pull them to their feet. We're all right, Ozzy. Just a bit shaken is all. Helen coughed as she stood, picking up her Kage staff and brushing off her new clothes, the Onyx Fury. A black dress fitted very close to her upper body. What appeared to be a crest of maple leaves was embroidered on the front. It was also on the flowing gold-lined sleeves, then flowed out in a draping hoop skirt. I meant to ask you, Helen, why do you insist on wearing the Infineon circlet rather than wearing the hat that goes with this new dress? Antonia asked. That hat has to be one of the most repelling adornments I have ever laid my eyes upon. I would rather wear this, since it seems more fitting to my tastes, Helen replied, tossing her hair back with a flip of her wrist and revealing the intricate gold weave crown with a small onyx chip dangling in the front on her forehead. Well, I, for one, like it a lot, Jack said as he walked up behind her, flicking his hands up to swing back the long blades of his white-fanged knucklers, and put his arms around her waist. His new white Morchini suit reflected the sunlight off its brilliant white shirt, as if it were a mirror, and a red bandana tied down his unruly spiky hair, decorated with small silver chains and beads. Well, suit yourself, but we should get back to Herbtown. I hear that Matthew and Jenny have brought back some information pertaining to what these cannons are from the Omega sector, Olden said, sporting his new Fire Osafa. It was adorned with a wide red leather belts and heavy buckles across his waist, wrists, and shoes, along with one belt wrapped around his head, adorned with a gold buckle. On his hand was the caster, a black metal sleeve having a solid gold dragon with glaring ruby eyes wrapping its body around it, all the way to its hand. The group ran back to the skiff they had been using for travel, quickly making the trip back to Herbtown within an hour, where Matthew, Lillian, and Jenny waited. Sorry, I kind of lost my spot there. So, what did you find out? Jack asked as he and the others walked up to the dining table. Matthew had donned the blackened Commodore armor, the large spaulders and tassets decorated with fine gold leaf designs. Nothing much more than what we already know about those cannons, except for the mana frequency the cannons are supposedly tuned to. The more I think about it, the more confusing it gets. Why would the Black Mage need something with so much power? Lillian asked. It troubles me. It troubles me as well. There is the Oblivion Gauntlet itself, those grace gears, as well as the massive amount of mana he's been draining from the land, Helen mused, until the pirate lord walked up to them, crossing his arms over his chest and peeking at them from under his hat, pulled low over his eyes but just over his bushy white mustache. I hate to interrupt ye thinkin', Storm, but there be a problem with the liquids these pandas be makin', he told them, motioning over to a pot of herbal paste that had been sitting in the sun. From inside the pot, arms and legs had sprouted, wriggling around while a strange eye appeared out on the world from another broken piece near the rim. What on earth happened? Jenny asked, wearing her newly finished Ains of Sapphire, a fitted sleeveless blouse with a long blue skirt that looked to have a golden phoenix woven into the front of the skirt. Her bow, the metis, was slung across her back, resembling a bird that had been made into a bow, while her new crossbow, the Casa Crow, hung from her belt. Yes, that's what we'll do. Okay.
I'm not really sure. There was a slight breeze, and then all the pastes and
medicinal salves we had been making just began walking around.
All right. Sorry I missed the the message there, but if you watch this later, Red, thanks for coming, and I hope you were at least mildly entertained by what you saw here today. Walking around, one of the pandas replied. Helen held her chin between her thumb and index finger, thinking about what it could be, when something caught her eye. Wait, is this? She held out her palm to the pot as a faint bluish-white glow gathered in her hand, while what looked to be a black eye with wings formed in her palm. "Dispel!" she shouted as the pot began lighting up with the same bluish-white glow, wriggling and bubbling as the glow sank into it and then went still. No sooner had the shaking stopped than the pot began shaking and squirming again, breaking free of the pandas that were holding it and running at Helen. "No, you don't!" Jack said, sliding between Helen and the pot, cocking back the hammer on his Peacemaker revolver. It responded with an enormous roar as flames burst from the barrel and incinerated it. "Jack, I was hoping we could at least attempt to find what it was that had taken over the salves," Helen hollered, firmly setting her staff on the ground. "Sorry, but the thing was charging. Do you expect me to do nothing?" "Calm down, Jack. We just need you to think a little farther ahead next time. Besides, it looks like those things are getting more and more aggressive," Matthew pointed out as he watched some of the new recruits trying hard to push back an advancing army of pots and jars, but with little or no luck, as Helen offered her analysis. "There is some kind of magic at work here. However, I would need a spell of a much higher caliber to dispel it. My normal dispelling method doesn't seem to work on this one." Jack thought for a moment, trying to think of how the game Maplestory and Ossyria were similar in this case. All right. Let's see. This is a thought here, so we shall do that. Okay, so this is Jack thinking. In the game, if I remember right, Captain Huang said that a monster had taken over the stuff inside the jars and was using it to create havoc in the herb town. But Helen says it's some kind of magic at work. Maybe it's a magical monster? Helen, is it possible for a creature to be made purely of magic? Jack asked, unsure of how the question would sound coming from him. Helen thought for a moment, searching her ever-expanding mind for what it was that Jack was seeking. Yes, it is possible, but it would require a great deal of power to perform something of this scale. The only ones who are even close to that kind of power are Grendel or Alcaster. Jack nodded as Jenny and Lily-Ann broke off and went to help their juniors fight off the advancing armies. This may take some time, but it just may work. Olson, do you remember the quest within the game for finding Miniver's spellbook? Matthew asked. Olson rolled his eyes and nodded. How could I forget? That quest was such a royal pain in the... Yes, I know. What if there was another dispelling method within that book? If I remember right, it should be within a statue about halfway up the Orbis Tower. Matthew interrupted. Then the first person we need to see is Alcaster. He should know for sure where we need to begin. Jack and Helen, do that while the rest of us will stay here. Oh, I forgot a letter. Stay here to hold off these things, Matthew called as he drew his Frout from his belt with a satisfying ring and charged into battle. Olson, Ozzy, Eris, Antonia, and Nathan close behind. Helen and Jack ran back to the dock and their skiff when Kirin tossed a bag of supplies onto the boat.
Aren't you on guard duty? Jack asked as he watched his mom board the ship. Not today. I'm tired of being stuck here all the time while you guys go out and have all the fun, she laughed, throwing the sack aside and untying the skiff. Jack shook his head as he guided the small craft away from the dock and into the sky, heading for El Nath, where their journey would begin. Scene change! Okay, so from here it appears that we will be going to, for the Maplestory guys, you'll be going to Edelstein. This is the home of the Resistance. Group of classes in the game. So, there is a bit of stuff that happened both in the story and in the game. So, if you are interested to know what happened, be sure and leave a comment in the description. If you would like to know what happened, leave a comment down below, and I will answer you when I get a chance. If you would like, let me rephrase that. If you would like to know what happened either in the story or the game, be sure and specify which one you'd like to know. So that way, because they're both slightly different, but they are different enough that, it's better to know one or the other, really. But if you want to know both, just let me know. Checky dropped the wrench for the 7th time to the floor and growled, clambering down the arm of his biped machine, picking up the wrench and then clambering back up the 9 feet to the shoulder of the mecha once more. "Don't you think that you should put a tether on that thing?" Belle called as she walked over to him and threw up to him a small rope. "Belle, you're a genius," he laughed, tying the rope to the wrench and then to his belt loop. "So, what are you working on over here? Shouldn't this thing be up and running by now?" Belle called, looking up at him from her vantage point. "It is, but the right shoulder still needs a bit of calibrating," Checky grunted as he tightened down the huge 1.5-inch nut. There. Now, let's see if that does it," he called, jumping down into the cockpit, which rested between the arms of the reconditioned drill mecha. It looked like a 10-foot-tall, headless mechanical person. Checky's legs slid into braces suspended just above the floor of the cockpit while he tightened the restraining harness, flipping switches on the control board. Gauges came to life as a mechanical voice named off various checks. Checky snaked his arms into braces similar to the ones on his legs, slipping his fingers into glove-like hands at the ends. "Rue generator operational. Beginning status check. Mana tanks at 100%. Beginning status check. Balance matrix showing green. Operational angle at 3.5 degrees positive initiated. Generator and mana tank showing green. Beginning nanosync." A mechanical female voice said that sounded an awful lot like Claudine. "Charge igniter. Begin startup sequence and disengage safeties," Checky commanded. Huge clamps on the sides of the mecha hissed steam and dislodged from the sides as they pulled back, letting the machine take its own weight, while a rising growl could be heard. A small blue flame from the exhaust flared on its back, aimed downward. Mana hydraulic system holding steady. Pressure within normal tolerances. Radar check complete and online. Nanosync complete. Awaiting standby disengage command. Standby disengage. Lima Oscar 269er. The machine jolted for a moment as the computer went silent. Checky pulled up his hands in a balking stance as the machine's arms did the same. He took a step forward, swinging his arm through different moves, walking around the garage as though he were an actual bigger version of himself. "Mainframe, start training course Tango Lima Oscar 1. A door opened to the side of the garage where a few training robots waited. Bell stood just outside the door to watch. As soon as he stepped into the room, it came alive with whines and clicks as the smaller robots followed after Checky like ants to a picnic. Checky's machine quickly ran and jumped over them, the ground shaking as he landed and then held up his arms, the machine following every move. The forearms split as a small 3-barreled machine gun rose from the hole, spinning up and erupting into a hailstorm of bullets. Checky then turned around and held up his other arm, which did the same, sputtering loudly as shell casings jingled on the floor. A small door on the right of his machine's chest rolled down as a huge stream of fire erupted into existence, toasting everything within its reach. Once the firestorm had calmed, Checky held up each of his arms again, with fire and bullets spraying the room and taking out everything in sight. He looked over the devastation that now lay everywhere and walked out of the room, over the bodies of the machines, large servos whining and hydraulic pistons hissing with each step. Whoa, talk about overkill! So, what's the mana for? I know you said you weren't any good at mana manipulation, Bell commented, making sure to stay well out of the way. Actually, it's what I used instead of a hydraulic fluid. It lasts a lot longer and doesn't gunk up the system like the junk fluid we were given to run these bolt heaps. Engage standby mode. The mech pulled his shoulders back and stood to attention, while the engine sounded like it went to a higher RPM. So, what's with the nano connection that I heard the computer say? Bell asked, feeling like she were a little kid just asking question after question. Checky rocked his head back and put up a finger. Ah, that. Before I made the control system, I had the Omega Sector send me a few vials of their nanites. I injected those into myself, which allows me to sync with the computer and change modes quicker than voice commands or switches on control sticks. This way, I can just think it rather than try and remember what one button does. What one button out of 50 does. Content! Bell was impressed. Not only had Checky made her a sturdy crossbow, but he had also made her the arrow turrets and the saddle for her panther. Darren came walking in, soot covering his face after he had been practicing the magic techniques he had been learning. He was also getting used to the mace-like wand Checky had made for him, which included a small mana tank at the top of the wand, made of a highly refined rue. At the rate we're going, we should have a strong enough force to rush the mines and free all the laborers in there, Darren shouted, swinging his wand around excitedly as Checky and Bell laughed in agreement. Claudine smiled as she composed a message for their outside supplier, asking for more parts so they could outfit more of the mechs like Checky's. Oh boy. Well, I probably should have done a bit more of a warm-up here. But we'll see how much longer I can go. Hopefully it'll be for the long enough time. Scene change! Now we're going back to the kids. Going and getting that magic book. A few hours later, Jack, Corinne, and Helen touched down in El Nath, greeted by Alfuben, whom they had found in the snowfield in a statue of ice. Is Alcaster in? Corinne asked. Alfuben nodded and took them to him just as he was finishing the bowl of red bean soup that he was famous for.
Corinne, Jack, Helen, what can I do for my friends today?
The old man smiled under his bushy white mustache and eyebrows. We're actually looking for Minerva's Book of Spells. From previous experience, we've heard it was in the Orbis Tower in a statue, Helen stated, as Alcaster rubbed his chin, searching his vast mind for information.
Yes, the Book of Spells. I had actually retrieved it for a
Content! You gotta love it.
I had actually retrieved it for a rambunctious couple of youngsters from Edelstein the other day. They wanted to learn some of the techniques within the book to help themselves.
So you have it here? Jack asked excitedly.
No, I returned it to the statue where it belongs. After all, a book like that could cause more damage than you know if it were to fall into the wrong hands. Why are you asking for it?
Alcaster replied seriously. Something has happened within Herbtown that my dispelling method is not working. I was hoping that there was something of a higher power I could use to hopefully stop it. Helen answered. Alcaster nodded his understanding, rubbing his chin over and over again, deep in thought.
I see. I'll take you to the statue, but you'll have to learn the dispelling method under me while here in El Naf. Even though you are the guardian mage of Ossyria, and have the power of the amethyst crystal at your disposal, the method can easily get out of control if you aren't careful. Once you have learned it enough to perform the base, I will accompany you back to Herbtown so that you can perform this dispelling method and make sure that you don't kill yourself in the process. In the meantime, I will need you to gather a few things for me.
Then what do you need? Corinne asked, eager to see if she could get a peek into the book and find something even more powerful that she could use to her advantage. Alcaster smirked slyly as he brought out a list of items that they would need to get, making the others slump in disappointment.
On this page should be everything that we will need to even open the statue's drawer. Now hurry, I'll get things ready on my end.
Corinne took the list and looked it over, immediately calling dibs on gathering the items marked as Enchanted Ring, located somewhere in the mountains north of the town. Jack and Helen quickly looked over the list, then left to begin climbing the stairways and ropes up the tower into the Cloud Park, where they would be able to find stellar, lunar, and solar magic badges of the Pixies. They were greeted by Eliza, who promised that she would help them gathering the badges, since the Pixies in the area had been slowly declining after the defeat of the Pixie Father. Corinne was soon joined by Skadur, the hunter, who would ward off the ferocious Hector wolves while Corinne searched around what appeared to be a tomb where Alcaster's list said the ring was stored. 2 hours later, the three of them returned with the necessary items, climbing up the tower to the statue somewhere within the center of it, with Alcaster leading the way. So, Alcaster, why is it that no one ever learns straight from this book? Why is it hidden all the time? Jack asked, helping the elderly Alcaster up a set of stairs.
Long ago, when Chorus and Minerva were still on good terms, they began writing down spells, forms, and techniques they had learned, so that one day they could pass along their knowledge to their children. Some of the less potent techniques were learned by your parents and passed along to you and others who came before you. However, there are techniques that even the 5 masters are unable to control.
Helen's ears burned as he spoke, piquing her interest as she heard him coming up the stairs. What if I were to train hard and don the Onyx Empress? Would I become powerful enough to learn even more from the book? Alcaster sadly shook his head.
No, Helen. Even though you will be many times more powerful than even your grandfather, even you won't be able to handle them. Only Minerva or Chorus had that kind of power it takes to wield them.
Helen nodded her understanding, just as they came to a door guarded by a strong spell. Alcaster took the spell down and led them in to reveal a statue of a beautiful woman with large wings. Each of them were decorated with small gem chips throughout their finely crafted feathers, seated upon a partial pillar. Wow, the statue in the game doesn't look anything like this, Jack admired, as he walked to the statue to get a closer look.
This is actually a small statue that a stonemason made in honor of Minerva before one of her wings changed.
Alcaster smiled. as he slowly knelt and slipped the ring into a depression on the stone below the statue, allowing Alcaster to pull open a drawer. Inside was a hard, leather-bound book with brass edging and plates across the covers. A large steel lock held the covers shut.
This is where those pixie badgers are needed.
Alcester smiled, as he pulled a small bowl from his sleeve and reached for the badges and ground them into a fine powder, then sprinkled it into the lock. Small gears inside the lock turned and clicked until the lock sprang open and allowed them passage to the words stored inside. Now we go back to Herbtown, where battle is happening. Matthew held up his arm and pushed as hard as he could with the shield form of his Gaia cloak, trying to keep him from breaking the pots, while Lillian did what she could to further push them back by using the wind from her powerful swings. This is really starting to get on my nerves. Do the thing there. Matthew growled as he pushed back another wave of pots and jars. Just hang in there, Matt, called Lillian, pushing off another content! Pushing off another rather large pot creature. We really need to try and save all that we can of the stuff that's in there. It took 3 years to make each of these salves, you know, Olsen called as he pushed another jar of boiling ginseng water back. Where is Helen? It's been hours since she left and I'm getting tired, called one of the recruits. Just hang in there. She'll be here soon, Jenny called, trying to sound hopeful as she was beginning to doubt that Helen was ever coming back. Olsen's skin began to tingle. Frantically, he looked around when he saw an enormous shuriken come fluttering through the air, directed at Eris. With barely any time to move, Olsen threw his arm down. The motion drew his own Huabi shuriken as he forced mana into it. It grew huge as he spun around and hurled it with a grunt to intercept the incoming shuriken. As it left his hand, fire exploded from around it, propelling the star even faster. Eris looked up just as the shuriken was about to hit her when a streak of fire flashed past her and pinned the shuriken to a tree. Olsen was about to ask if she were all right when a boiling pot of ginseng water tipped itself up. A rush of boiling water poured all over him, searing pain exploding from his arm and face. The momentary lapse in Olsen's attention allowed him to be overrun. "Olsen!" Ozzy called, kicking back a pot and then jumping over the squirming mass to get to his master, when he too was splashed with the boiling water in his face. Antonia was the nearest to him and tried to fight her way through the advancing wave. No matter what she did, she seemed to be getting further and further away from him. Jenny swung her bow to... Content! Jenny swung her bow... So much content today. Jenny swung her bow as hard as she could, creating a strong wind to blow the pots back just long enough that she could get to Ozzy and Olsen before being overrun again. She was just setting them down when another huge cauldron of boiling water walked up behind her and began to tip itself over. She pulled up her cloak to block the waterfall, making it wash to the sides. The heat from the water pushed through, though, quickly heating her arm to almost unbearable levels. Just when she thought she wouldn't be able to hold off any more of the heat, Olsen managed to rise above his pain and pull his cloak between her cloak and her arm, shielding them from the water. "I've had it!" Eris shouted, throwing open the cylinder of her pistol, taking it off its axle and throwing on another to accept a larger caliber round as the barrel glowed to adjust. She thumbed a mighty caliber bullet into the air and caught it in the cylinder just as she flicked it. Okay, I am missing a word there. She thumbed a mighty caliber bullet into the air and caught it in the cylinder as she flicked it shut. The gun roared back with a loud explosion. The pot dumping water into Olsen and Jetty shattered, spilling the water away from them and washing away a wave of creatures, allowing them to come out from under their cloaks. I'm not playing defense any longer. It's time to stick it to them. Eris shouted. In a blur, she reloaded her gun and began firing rounds off without holding back. Matthew grit his teeth and reached back for his sunrise, while blue electricity felt over the blade as he drew it. His warriors overcharged, flaring bright around his wrist. Nathan held his spear above his head and spun it around, while the effect of Matthew's rage came over him. His cape was blown up as threads of blue electricity snapped from his spear to the ground. Nathan then slammed the tip of his spear into the ground, making a sonic wave rip through the enemies surrounding him. Antonia soared through the air after using one of the flying pots from Nathan's attack as a springboard, firing off bomb arrows into the midst of the pots. Each shot broke large groups as though they were nothing. Matthew swung through each of the pots as though they were butter, gaining orbs with each swing until all 5 had gathered around his wrist. With a grunt that sounded more like a roar, he stepped wide and swung his sword in a wide arc, leveling all the pots within the sunrise's reach. Lillian swung around a few times, gathering her momentum and unleashing a powerful wave of ice. It froze the air and ground as it went, hitting more and more pots with greater and greater speed. Just as the 4 of them were about to begin their next assault, a bright light appeared in their midst to reveal Helen, Alcaster, who held a glowing open book, Jack, and Kirin. Helen's eyes glowed a bright violet, and her hair looked to be made of violet water, flowing in an unseen wind. Helen, are you? But Matthew didn't have time to finish his question, as Helen held out her arms to her sides, then swung her left fist down to her center, while she swung her right hand up and down to meet her fist, holding 2 fingers upright. Be still and be vanquished, she said, her voice echoing as she shot her hands forward and held her palms flat to the ground. A wave of violet light pulsed from her chest, hitting every pot, making them become still, hanging in midair. In another instant, the pots then settled on the ground as the holes within them repaired, and a small spark of light rose from inside the pot. All of the sparks gathered in the middle, becoming contained within a glass bottle. Helen then folded her hands and closed her eyes as she took a long, meaningful breath, while the glow in her hair and eyes ceased. What in Ossyria was that? Jenny asked, as she stopped in mid-rap of Olsen's burns.
That was a very powerful dispelling method. I've never seen this particular method used to such a degree, and with such little effort. You 5 just may possess the power to wield the secrets of this book someday after all, Alcaster said with a happily surprised voice.
Helen then told them of what it was that she had learned. That explains a lot, but that doesn't quite explain why your eyes and hair were glowing like they were, Matthews said as he dropped the sunrise into the sheath on his back and transformed the Gaia back to its cloak form. From my studies within my grandfather's library, I was able to learn that the amount of crystal power that we have been using is only a small, minute fraction of the crystal's true potential. In order for us to use such a high level of its power for any extended amount of time on command, we must first become equivalent to what we might know as a level 200 character within the Maplestory game. Helen replied. Nathan walked up to the small bottle still hanging in the air, which looked to be completely empty. He was about to reach for it when Helen teleported to him and stopped him. Don't touch it. I thought that I sensed something like this at first, but I was not able to dispel it before. This is a swarm of magic parasites. When released into the air, they will take hold of anything that it comes in contact with to become its host. Anything it touches can serve as a vessel, but mostly things that are liquid in nature are the first thing that it will try to control.
Jack crossed his arms and huffed hard.
The only thing that we couldn't figure out, though, is who was stupid enough to get a hold of something like this and release it into the wind in the first place, he strongly voiced as he punched his left hand.
That would be me,
came a smooth reply from what seemed to be nowhere.
Who are you? Show yourself,
Matthew demanded, drawing his Frout short sword and transforming his cloak once again into a shield. Well, let's see. I'm kind of wondering, do we have anybody who's watching the stream right now? If we do, give me a little shout out here. Like, even if you have it on in the background or whatnot, give me a little shout out. Let me know if you're watching. I mean, I'll continue on, but Daniel, how you doing? Hopefully you are mild. Oh, you just got here. Okay. Yeah, I'm just been reading off. Cool. I've just been reading off of season 3 of Maplestory the novel. Had a couple people join earlier, but it's been a little lonely for a little while. I don't know if somebody is just... I'm not exactly sure how the algorithm works. If it has something where it just just doesn't show me who's viewing, if people have it on in the background or whatnot. But hopefully from here out, you're going to be mildly entertained by what I've got going on here today. Okay, I'm just taking a little bit of a break here, give my voice a rest. Let's see. Right, who are you? Okay, so we're right here. I haven't gotten completely through chapter 1 of season 3 here. I think there's just a little bit left of it. So we shall continue on. Okay, it's all good. Besides, I'm just kind of reading in the background. So there's really not much to watch, so to speak, but you can listen in. More so than anything. Okay, so now they were just asking an invisible person who it was and where they are. Okay. And the person was responding back, "Oh, now where's the fun in that? Olsen was very clever in deflecting my shuriken, but how are you all against defending a... How are you all... How are... That's just stupid. How are your skills at defending against something you can't see, I wonder? There we go, that's better. Olsen was very clever in deflecting my shuriken, but how are your skills at defending against something that you can't even see, I wonder?" the voice said, when the air behind Matthew seemed to fold and reveal a man with charcoal skin appear. He struck Matthew across the back with a bamboo sword and brought him to his knees. Just as quickly as he appeared, the man once again disappeared from view. "Oh my, not as well as I thought. This could be so much more fun if you were to fight back. And yet you can't do anything as I take you down one by one."
the voice said again, as the air folded behind Eris, allowing him to quickly hit a series of points on her body and bring her to the ground. Nathan turned just as the air folded, picking up his spear and threw it straight for the man with all he had. But the man disappeared again, and as the spear stuck into a tree behind where the man had been standing a moment before. "Ah, how pitiful! That's two I've taken down, and you have yet to put so much as a rash on me." The voice laughed. "Were you the one who released the magic parasite?" Helen demanded, looking over Olsen's burns and beginning to heal them. The voice laughed again. "And what if I was? It was merely a test to see how powerful you lot are. It matters not to me whether or not you live, or if any of you live for that matter. All I want is to be able to allow a new era to begin, with the mage at its head." Again, he appeared and struck a few points on Helen's body, making her fall to the ground. One by one, the others were taken down, as the man would appear, strike a set of pressure points on the body, and disappear once again, until Olsen was the only one remaining. The pain on his face and arm had been dulled some by Helen, but was still quite strong. Olsen did what he could to rise above his pain and stand to his feet, careful not to move his arm too much. "It looks like you're the only one remaining, Olsen. My, how boring this was. If I kill you, then I will be promised a seat at the table with the Black Mage. I really thought this was going to be a much more interesting fight. It seems that all I've done is make myself bored. And so, with that, I say farewell, Guardians." Olsen closed his eyes and took a deep breath, listening to the winds as they gently whispered around him, his pain seeming to melt away. Helen looked up from her position on the ground to see the air fold behind Olsen. It revealed a man standing behind him with what appeared to be a bamboo sword in his hand. She tried to call out, but there was nothing that she could say. It was as if her voice simply didn't exist. The man raised the sword above his head and was about to strike Olsen when, in a blur of motion, the man grunted while blood ran down from the corners of his mouth. He looked down to see that Olsen's claw hand was driven through his gut. Bands of violet-colored light began curling around Olsen's arm, disappearing into his elbow while his burns healed. Just before his burns were completely healed, Olsen pulled his fist from the man's gut, swinging his hand hard to the side to shake the blood from it as the man stumbled back. "Thank you. I needed that," Olsen growled, looking over his shoulder with a cold light in his blazing eyes. "But how? You shouldn't have been able to sense my presence behind that veil," the man asked, dropping the scroll and his sword as he cast a simple healing spell to close the wound he had received. "That's where you're wrong. Did you forget that I am the guardian ninja of Ossyria? I may still be human, but I have a power far greater than you could ever hope to defeat, as do all the guardians of Ossyria. You are far outclassed, bamboo warrior," Olsen shouted, as Lillian ran from person to person, holding a small talisman above them to release the nerve attack from the man. "You'll pay for that," Matthew growled as the shadows around him became gold light, while the other guardians began to do the same as the mana overdrive took effect. The man quickly reached for his sword, but was sent flying when Jack hit his jaw with a powerful lightning punch. Ooh. Man, I don't know if you guys heard that on stream, but man, my neck cracked pretty hard. Just as the warrior was beginning to recover, Helen appeared behind him and swung her staff as a blast of flames hit his back and sent him flying. Jenny appeared above him and quickly fired 4 spine arrows, 2 in his shoulders and 2 in his hips, that drove him to the ground. Olsen was the next to appear, drawing his Cursair dagger and spare kunai, kicking the warrior in the back to stop his fall. With a blur of motion, he slashed at his back, threw the daggers to the ground, and folded his hands with his index fingers held up. As if from thin air, priests, ninjas, and sumo fighters appeared, each of the 7 fighters hitting the warrior once, followed by dark-colored bats hitting him on all sides until he was shot forward. Lillian held her halberd handle out and stopped him dead. In a whirl of movement, she slammed him to the ground. The man tried to get up despite the pain in his shoulders, hips, and back, but was hit with a volley of slashes by Lillian, all while her halberd began to glow with hot yellow light. She swung hard and hit him in the gut with an orange beam of pure energy. Matthew took a breath and then braced against his shield, stopping his flight while his sword iced over. He swung up, then left, up again, then back down, slamming the man to the ground face first. The arrows drove. The arrows drove through his body and out his back before dissipating into nothing. Matthew held his sword to the sky as a beam of light rose into the sky. The warrior struggled to get up, pulling his arms and legs under him when his hand brushed against his bamboo sword. "Is that really all you've got?" he shouted, grabbing his sword and getting up in a blur to connect with Matthew's neck. "Whew, I need some water." Don't forget to hydrate before you dehydrate. 5 swords made of pure light fell from the sky and drove through the man's body and sword arm, stopping him in mid-stride. That is a mere taste of what we can do. Run back to the mage and tell him the day is coming that we will stop him. Matthew growled as he dropped his arm, making the swords fade, dropping him to the ground as he faded into unconsciousness. Matthew took a calming breath, breaking the mana overdrive and returning them all to their previous power levels. "Helen, can you heal his wounds? I want to make sure that he gets back to the mage with our message," Matthew asked, ceremoniously sheathing his sword. Helen nodded as she held her hands over him with her healing touch, while Olsen undid the nerve attack spells on their apprentices. Corinne and Alcester came from behind a tree and clapped their hands. "Where were you this entire time?" Jenny asked with a squeak in her voice. Alcester went to Olsen and completed healing his burns. "Are you kidding? There was no way that I want to get involved in that fight. If another of the masters were here, then maybe. But that was a very impressive show of power and control," Corinne complimented. Matthew, however, sat and thought about what it was that had happened. I would have killed him if it wasn't for something that he had said," Matthew mumbled. Corinne became curious and turned to him. "What did he say?" "He said that he had been promised a seat with the Black Mage if he killed us. But thinking back to when we had gone to Ariant, Jack had said that the Black Mage himself had come there and took Areda away when she was about to kill them. That tells me that we are somehow important to the mage. For what, I don't know. But it does make me wonder whether or not we've been walking into a trap this entire time." Helen stopped her healing and began pondering the same thought as Matthew. "That raises a lot of questions, Matthew. Such as, is the mage gathering the crystal husks to somehow extract our power? Is our becoming stronger really working in the mage's favor?" The group of them began to seriously think about what it was they may have stumbled into,
not sure if they were indeed doing Ossyria a favor or sending it to hell. With questions mounting in their minds, the group gathered their belongings and headed back into town, not seeing the black hands wrap around the man and make him disappear into a cloud of smoke. Ooh. All right. Scene change. Darren walked to the back alley with Claudine when they heard the small bell to tell them that their informant had arrived, confirmed with their passphrase. It's been a while since we've seen you. What else have you gathered? Claudine asked. The man in the shadows laughed slightly. Security's been tightened around the castle for some unknown reason, so it took me a while to get out unnoticed. Anyway, the mage asked the bamboo warrior to defeat the guardians, but of course, that failed. Also, Dragon and Eleanor have become almost inseparable, even though the mage from time to time still gets slightly physical with Eleanor. Darren nodded as he thought. Anything else? The person sighed heavily as he replied. Yes, actually. It wasn't anything concrete, but somewhere near the mines there is a facility that houses the storage tanks for holding mana the mage has been draining from the land. Really? This is worth looking into. Keep us posted, Claudine said, as a sound of thick leather fluttering in the dark left them, while Darren and Claudine walked back to the garage. So, what do you think? Darren asked. Claudine shook her head. I'm not sure. Hiding those tanks near the mine seems too easy. We'll be sure to send a scout out tomorrow and see if anything comes up out of the ordinary. Beyond that, we'll just have to wait and see and rely on the informant. All right. Now, we shall see what the consequences of the bamboo warrior failing his mission to the mage is. The warrior's eyes fluttered as he slowly awoke, finding himself strung up with his arms and hands spread wide and locked in place within the dungeon of the mage's castle. He tried to pull free when the mage's hissing whispers stopped him cold. "What is the meaning of this?" the warrior demanded. The mage's eyes laughed while breathy whispers pulsed in the air as though he were laughing as he shook his head. The warrior grit his teeth in anger as the mage shushed his question to him. "You bastard! You knew I wouldn't succeed, didn't you?" The mage narrowed his eyes as he breathed a self-controlling breath until Eleanor appeared beside him Content! Until Eleanor appeared beside him and answered. "That's exactly right. You never would have succeeded. But now, thanks to you, they are beginning to question their purpose for being here. Do you know how much extra work you have just created for the mage?" she asked with an agitated tone. "I just told them plainly what was going to happen." The warrior choked when the mage appeared before him and gripped his neck tightly. The mage growled his disapproval, hissing loudly into the warrior's ears until he reached his fingers around his neck and to his jaw and squeezed hard, making him open his mouth. The mage then reached into his mouth. The mage grabbed his tongue and ripped it from his mouth as blood poured from between his lips. Ugh, gets me every time. I keep forgetting that I wrote that. The warrior's cell door slammed hard, echoing through the stone walls as the mage left him hanging there, blood pouring from his mouth and pooling on the floor. He then looked in the corner, watching as his tongue began to sizzle and rot in the thick miasma fog. Dragon appeared at his side, following Eleanor and the mage as they walked back to the gauntlet room, then walked to a desk and reached into it, pulling a marionette doll from the desk. Master, far be it from me to question you, but what is that?" Dragon asked. Eleanor looked back to Dragon, walking over to him and putting her arms around his waist, pulling her body close to Dragon. That is a projection doll. I've only seen him use it once in an experiment, but it allows the mage to create a temporary person using this doll as a base. Eleanor explained. The mage nodded in agreement, turning to the window as he cuddled the doll in his palm, whispers drifting through the air. I see. And with this doll, you intend to fix the questioning of their purpose? Dragon asked, as the mage turned over his shoulder and nodded. Upon turning back to the doll, the mage narrowed his eyes when a strange, soft echo could be heard in his mind, coming to him like a long-lost memory. You're so heartless, Chorus, a soft female voice said in his mind. The mage looked up and narrowed his eyes before chuckling to himself as he thought. Even after all these years, even from beyond the grave, Minerva was still trying to interfere.
Okay, so that was complete of chapter 1. So let's see. Let's see what we got here. We have 296 pages. So what we're going to do, first off, I am going to do a thing here. And then I'm going to do a picker. Okay, first off, I need to know where we're at. Okay, we are at 19. Okay. So we're going to go somewhere between page 19 and 296. And I will be right back because I have something on my end that I need to take care of. So I'll be right back, and then we'll see the result of where. We're just going to read a random page out of the thing. So I'll be right back. Alrighty. So now, no, not between I went between 19. All right. So we are going to find out. We just finished chapter 1. If those of you who are just joining, just finished chapter 1 of season 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to put up a random number picker between pages 19, which is where we're at right now, which is the beginning of chapter 2, and page 296, which is the final page of this season. We're going to read the random page. And so, the random number is 181. Alrighty. Let us see where that leads us. Okay, so we're going to grab this and we're going nope, still about 10 pages away. Okay, 181. Oh! Alright, so we shall, instead of reading the entire page, because it's actually between 2 chapters here, we shall read the beginning of chapter 10, which is The Guardians Emerge completed. Now, for those who are Maplestory nerds, this is actually what used to be, I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist anymore, but this used to be the Explorer's 4th job advancement, which most of the information that I have here for this story is from pre-Big Bang, or right around Big Bang. Still, Big Bang was still had the 4th job and quest line and stuff, but it wasn't as difficult. However, most of this stuff in this story is from way older in the game. So if you were to play the current game, the current version of the game, you'd be totally lost as to what is actually happening here in the story. Because I believe in the current version of the game, you really actually don't go to another master for job advancements anymore. As far as I'm aware, I think you even just go to the original master for the initial job advancement, and then just say, I want to become a warrior, I want to become a mage, I want to become a thief, I want to become, whatever. And then boop, there you are. And then after that, you just oh, you reached a level milestone. Well, congratulations, here's the next set of skills. Boop. Which, to be fair, the original 3rd job advancement in Maplestory, that was tough. And I actually went, I believe it was even this character that I have, my current character that I have on Maplestory. I went through the original 3rd job advancement. Oh boy, if I didn't have a guide, I would never make that job advancement. Because there was a point where you actually had to do like a Maplestory knowledge quiz. And I mean, it was stuff that you would have really had to pay attention to. I mean, it was one of the questions was, how many feathers are on Dances with Balrog's headdress? And I believe the correct number is 13 or something like that. But you would never, it's one of those things that you would never ever really pay attention to. However, to a degree, it does raise the question though. It did make you pay attention more in the game rather than just going, oh, I'm just going to do this quest, boop, 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 done. And, I mean, I get it. You don't want to have a gigantic grind fest, but There's a lot that you miss in the game. I think even like one of the other questions was there's an NPC named Dr. Betty. She has, I believe she has blue eyes. She has red shoes, and I think she has yellow earrings or something like that. One of the questions in this quiz would ask you what color her earrings were. And I remember even one time coming across that, and I think I had to like end the quest. But the thing was, is the questions would always be random, so it would never ever put the same questions in twice. So you had to, like, if you ended it once, you would have to do the whole thing all over again, but with a different set of questions, and it wouldn't be the same. So then you had, it was brutal, but it was also interesting. I did like it. So anyways, page 181. Let's read. Let's see. What is it? Robera? I think it would be. Robera looked up from her scroll, sensing the excitement that emanated from the spirits of the five in Herbtown, like a sweet melody from afar. So, they have finally reached the last leg of their journey, she said, as she returned her scroll while Tylus walked to the window, looking towards Herbtown.
And now that they have reached this final leg of their journey,
he continued,
the load they bear will only become heavier, finished Renee.
I can only hope that the trials that await them in the end,
Pedro mused, getting up from his table and holding out his pistol after he had cleaned it,
will not be so intense that it will break their hearts,
Eric finished, silently dropping down from the rafters just as a knock came onto the door. Who goes? All five of them answered in unison. A mage of fire and poison who wishes to be taught so that he may learn the spells of the third degree. Robera hovered over to the door and pulled it open with a soft smile on her lips. Master Adrian, many pleasant salutations to you. I am Advanced Master Robera. I must ask before we continue. Are you worthy?
Okay. I forgot that was there. So, and here's what, like, I'll keep doing number pickers, but I'll only read like on the page until it'll make sense. So, if there's more to what is there, more on the page, of course I won't read it, but I'll try to make sense out of what's being read. Okay. So, let's see. No. It's not what I wanted to do. Be right back. Here we go. Random number picker. Between 19 and 296. Okay, and the number is 27. Okay, so let's see what number 27, page number 27 is. Oh, a little too far. Oh, okay. Okay, so this is, I believe this is part of chapter 2. But this part of the story, I actually, with permission, of course, let me see if I can find it.
Okay, nope, it's not that. Nope, it's not that. No. No. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so let's see if I can find it. Because where I got the inspiration from, there was an artist. I hope they're still on here. I can't remember their name, so I'm looking for the picture. But they drew a picture of their mechanic class. And I think they had a little short story to go with it. And at the time, I was still writing this story and asked if I could use their character and story in my story. And they became a character who was part of it. So I need to see if I can find that picture again. Hopefully I can find it because, you know, there's a lot of different arts. Okay, let's see. Nope, that's definitely not it. I kind of wish you could just, like, go to the end page. Okay. Let's see. Nope, that didn't narrow the results any further. I want to find it now. Let's see. Nope. Okay. Oh, man. Oh, I could have sworn I remember what it was. But she's on DeviantArt. I know that. The person who did actually do the initial drawing that inspired it. But, so if you are out there, I can't remember what your name is, but your character of Abby, you are still a major part of the Guardian story. I just can't remember what your DeviantArt name is right off the top of my head. So if you're still out there and you still happen to see this, by all means, hit me up. I'd really, like to see how you're doing. So, okay. It seemed just like yesterday when truck 1503 was in the Rue Mine repair shop for a new axle. Quickly, Abby hopped off her stool where she ate her meager sandwich and walked over to the tracked truck. "What's wrong this time, Sam?" she asked, looking under the truck again to see if the axle was still holding up.
"I think the engine's rowing out.
This old thing will barely move its own weight, let alone 10 tons of ore.
Abby huffed as she put down her sandwich and pulled up the hood flap as a plume of black smoke billowed into her face. I hate to say it, but I think that thing is shot. It'll take at least a day to repair, she coughed, when truck 361 rumbled by and backfired, then came to a bumpy stop. What's wrong, Jess? She called from the repair station. Nothing, Abs. Just hit the brakes before I hit the clutch, he called, as the truck sputtered back to life and then rolled away.
What's the problem? Why isn't this truck running ore back to the surface? The marshal asked, walking up to the two of them.
Because this truck is shot, and here's a list of what I need to keep your other trucks running, Abby said, as she forced a clipboard into the man's chest.
New Caterpillars for 4872, a new drivetrain for 201, new transmission for 834, shocks, clutches, safety glass, buttons, levers, cables. What's wrong with this one? He asked, pointing to 1503.
The engine just quit. I've bored that thing out so many times that the cylinder must have blown out.
So what can you do about it? The marshal asked.
Nothing. The block is gone. I'd need new pistons, rings, block, and crankshaft just to get the thing to move again. And that's just for starters. Why can't you send some of this stuff back to the garage in town? I hear the mechanic there is really good with this stuff.
The marshal growled, and then threw the clipboard to the ground.
Okay, well, that's that.
So, let's go on to the number generator again. Let's get a new number, and the number is
289. Oh, right.
I just randomly jumping around in the story, so if you guys have a suggestion you'd like, I'm all ears. All right, 289. Okay, there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Oh, okay. So this one here is this particular part of the chapter or particular chapter was depicting the old Ellen Forest quest line that you used to do. It used to have a party quest where you would face the fairy queen, Ephania, and I think you could get a ring out of her. Maybe even a badge. I can't remember exactly what you used to get out of it. You used to get some pretty good stuff out of it. It was a whole quest line that you actually had to do that was part of the past. I've seen this thing 3 separate times. So the original one, the very original one, you actually, in the game, you actually went back in time and talked to Athena Pierce when she had, just after the black mage got sealed. So there was that. And then you were helping them to basically survive because the fairy queen was making the entire forest poison and too hard to survive in there. So it was your job to make sure they survived. And then when you go back to the present, it's like, oh, thank you for doing what you did back in the past. Then the new one after that was still the same quest line, but it was simplified a little bit. It wasn't quite so involved. However, the party quest was removed because originally there was a party quest that you could do after you finished that whole quest line in the very original one. And you had to take on, I think it was called the Poison Golem. I forget what the storyline behind it was, but there was an additional party quest you could do. Then the new one took the party quest out and simplified the whole quest line a bit. And now the new one has pretty much done away with the entire quest line entirely. Doesn't even bring it up. And there are some things that changed that show how Corinne, who is the pirate master in Maplestory, when Corinne was born, she basically lost both her parents on the same day. Because her father went to go find some secret and basically drove him mad, so he like committed suicide or something like that. It was dark. But her mother died while giving birth to her. So it was pretty bad. So anyways, this is part of that quest here. Okay. So I don't know. The queen really didn't tell me why she wanted the humans gone, but she changed after she met that man. Yes, we fairies have always disliked you humans, so greedy and disgusting and... Stay on topic, Jenny sneered. She was never this hateful, the fairy huffed. Jenny released the tension on the sinews of her crossbow, hooking it on her belt while Jack set the fairy down. As I have said before, our intention is to stop thy queen. If her death is what must come, then that is the path we shall pursue, Helen explained, as the group left through the woods, continuing to follow the map they were given. I still think you humans are vulgar, the fairy called. Thanks. I'll remember that, Lillian called over her shoulder as she disappeared further into the woods. For almost an hour they trekked, sometimes coming across more battalions of fairies that attempted to poison them. Oh, need water. For almost an hour they trekked. Instead, they would be flung to the ground, dizzy and disoriented, or have their wings accidentally torn from their bodies. When they finally arrived near the westernmost edge of the island, the map stated that Ephania was within a chamber-like clearing. It's supposed to be marked by a fern with a small butterfly wings made of light on the topmost crook. Pulling it will open a curtain where she is, Jenny explained. The fern was almost too easy to find as it stood in plain view. Each of them prepared for battle ahead, as symbols ignited all around them. All was still as they entered the clearing. A nest was situated under a single ray of light that was perfectly clear as it reached all the way to the sky. Each of them listened carefully, not sure what exactly this Ephania was supposed to look like. They had never seen her, nor did they have any kind of description. So, you're the ones that vanquished my little experiment. You are but mere children. A pompous woman's voice laughed, echoing throughout the clearing. Why don't you come out here and find out how childlike we are? Jack demanded, holding up his fists at the ready. He transformed his cloak to the hard armor suit he had used in Ariant. Come now, I think we both know how this is going to end, don't you? The voice asked, as Matthew transformed his cloak to the serrated teeth form on his Nibelheim. If your mind is anything like ours, then I think you already know the answer to that, Matthew retorted, squinting his eyes, which had cleared considerably, but were still hazy and watering. Oh, I doubt that you even know what powers I possess, the voice said, when a swirl of energy appeared on each of their chests. They began walking to the western part of the clearing, where a sheer cliff waited for them to the ocean below. All right. Interesting. There is more to that. I just haven't actually published it. Okay, so we got time for one more. Let's pick one more. And the number is 113. Okie dokie. So, let's see. Let's see what number 113 has to offer us. Too far. Okay. Ah, okay. So this part of the chapter was is involved with what would be the pathway down to the Zakum fight. Or Zakum, yeah. I don't know how you say it, Zakum or Zakum. Either way, it's basically a statue with 8 arms on it that goes hooga booga booga and tries to smash you. Beyond that, the original version of it, I believe you had to walk down through what was called the Mine of the Dead. I believe that's what it's called. Or Dead Mine, I think it was called. Yeah, Dead Mine. You had to walk down through the Dead Mine, and then when you get to the bottom of it, there was actually a jump quest you had to complete in order to be able to take on the boss monster Zakum. And from what I understand, it was actually a pretty brutal thing. By the time I joined, I think I either passed it over or I never got a chance to actually attempt it. I think the actual jump quest may still be in the game somewhere, but I don't remember. It's been forever since I even attempted to find it out. But this is the path. This part of the chapter is on the way to and part of the boss fight for Zakum, who in the story or in the game itself, I believe was just a statue that became sentient after having like numerous tons and tons and tons of like sacrifices given to it. So, and then it began demanding more sacrifices and whatnot. And then the heroes came along and beat it into crumbling pebbles and whatnot, and yay, everybody's saved. However, in the story here, in my story, I have changed it around a little bit to where Zakum is actually a 9-headed Hydra dragon. There is a reason for that, but it is not relevant to the conversation here. So if you have questions about that, you can either ask them in chat or you can ask them in the comments later. And I will answer as best I can. All right. Zakum must have done something with him. We need to hurry, Jack commented, just as the ground lurched and swayed for a moment, shaking the snow from atop the buildings. With a concerned look, the 6 of them began running to the entrance of where the mine would be, finding that it had been dug out. Claw marks and scales littered the pathway down into the dark. Helen, Jenny, and Matthew called upon their flame attacks to light their way, carefully climbing over the unstable ground for a long while, until they came to the rivers of hot lava deep underground. Well, at least we don't need torches anymore, Olson laughed nervously, trying to keep from drawing the attention of the huge bane hounds that resided there. Bones and the smell of rotting meat filled the air, telling them that Zakum must have used the people of the village to put the hounds to sleep once their bellies were full. There were a few tense moments where Alden couldn't help himself and sniffed one of the hound's paws, and again when a loose stalagmite fell into the bubbling lava. There's the door to Zakum's chamber, hissed Jenny, the 6 of them splitting up and hiding behind the walls next to the door. Quieting their breathing, they ready to begin their assault. Olson flicked 2 shuriken into his hand, holding up his other hand. He listened to the movements that went on inside the chamber, then waved his hand down, signaling them all to rush in. "All right, Zakum, stop right there," Jack uttered in bewilderment. The 6 of them looked around the empty chamber, where a finely designed crest was carved onto the floor. On the back wall of the chamber were 2 people suspended in the air as though they had been crucified. Jack instantly recognized one of them as being Richie, but the second young girl he didn't recognize.
Well, 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 what do we have here? Came a smooth voice as Akum came down to the floor, winding 3 of his heads around the guardians, flipping his tongues as though he were a snake. Jack and Matthew's shoulders felt tight, just waiting for when the Hydra would strike. Why would you 6 deprive me of what I want more than anything in this world? One of the heads asked, as Akum's body moved around in front of them, the other 4 heads coiling their necks. Because this world is not yours to conquer. You may be a powerful Hydra, but you are all alone. Not even Skeleth will come to your aid, Helen shouted. Zakum laughed, sounding like a bad echo as each head laughed with a different timing. I haven't heard that name in a very long time. In any case, I won't be stopped again. I will rule, and there is nothing you can do about it, he roared, 2 of the heads opening their mouths wide, unleashing a blockade of flames. Olsen ran to the front and held up his cloak. It glowed brightly as it directed the deadly flames around them. Another pair of Zakum's heads took a hissing breath and unleashed their flames on him as well. The force further pressed down on Olsen. He struggled to hold up the cloak, the flames becoming too heavy to hold back.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, that is where I am going to be ending this, because my throat has just about had it. So for those of you who watch later, I hope you had a good time. Next week, I plan on trying to actually play a game. There should be a couple minor updates coming out for either Satisfactory, and I'll see if I can do some stuff on Elden Ring. We'll kind of see how it rolls next week, but yeah. Also, by this evening, probably in the next 4 to 5 hours, I should have the Chapter 15 Part 3 out and ready to go. So there is that. I might also put up a short video because I will be looking for a couple voices for a couple characters. They will have, I'll say this here now, the characters will have a very short, well, relatively speaking, a short appearance in the story in Chapter 16. And then they will be, one character makes 2 appearances after that in the story as a whole. The other character will be making periodic appearances, though they aren't in the story a lot. So if you are interested, leave a comment on the I'll see if I can put up an audition call or a casting call later tonight, or either tonight or tomorrow, and we shall go from there. But yeah.
Thanks everyone for coming. I hope you were at least mildly entertained by what you saw, and I hope that you'll be back next week to do it again. If you want to be notified when I go live, be sure and become a coin in the vault by hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell. Be sure and have a look around the channel and check out Maplestory the Novel, Sacred Tears, Sly Cooper, Rise of Vexen, or Arcane, all of which are fully voice acted with sound effects and music. Don't forget to comment and tell the voice actors just how good they did, because without them, it wouldn't be as awesome. I hope to see you guys next time, so until then, my friends.